What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and this video I want to talk about Yakuza real quick. It's been a very interesting last couple months for the franchise. A franchise I love, a franchise I recently have loved. You know, I got into them the last couple years, and I've played almost every single one of them in like a 14-month span. I mean, I adore this franchise ever since I got in, and the last little while has been bumpy. You know, all the different things going on with Yakuza 3, right? Or I guess Kiwami 3, and the scandal that's going on there. There's a lot of, very iffy stuff happening. And of course, I covered it on my Back to the Past channel, the delisting of Yakuza 0, basically replacing it with a director's cut, which I think makes the story worse in almost every way. And maybe that's a Sega decision, maybe that's not an RGG decision, but Yakuza has had a couple, bumps in the road. So I want to do in this video, well, we got one interesting story about Yakuza 3, and then we have, I would say, the best story I've seen in several months, okay? So let's take the good story first. We might as well dissolve the team right now. Like a Dragon boss won't bend to overseas popularity. So this comes from Push Square. Long and short of it is pretty much the franchise is growing, and with it growing, it would be very easy to drop everything that makes this franchise special and just almost, not necessarily modernize it, but actually maybe westernize it, because they talk about that, it's growing in the West, all these new fans are kind of coming in, and it would be very easy to just say, let's drop it, let's make it about, the West. They even say like foreign protagonists and set the story overseas, but if we did that, it wouldn't be Like a Dragon. There would be no point in us making it. This is what I'm talking about right here. Okay, no, this is really good to hear, and it's not the first time we've heard this. I think at the time, like around the time Infinite Wealth came out, they talked about, like, I think there was a line of like men in their like mid to late 40s, right? These men that are just kind of going on wacky adventures. Like that's the core of Yakuza / Like a Dragon, and that's going to be the core. And it doesn't matter basically who the demographic is. That's the types of games and the types of characters that they like to do. And I love that. I think that's the early signs of like, yeah, it is weird. You don't have many franchises that have games starring. I mean, like Ichiban, if you know like the history and like the lore of these games, like Kiryu, yeah, he's older, in terms of the lore. Ichiban is not like some 20-year-old. He's in his early 40s, I believe, in Like a Dragon, and then Infinite Wealth is even a little bit after that. So they've, even the guy who is, was introduced at the time for like the new age, the new era, right? We're resting Kiryu and we're going to give it to Ichiban. They made him 10 years younger? Like they're not doing 20-year-olds. I mean, Yakuza 0, I guess, right, was the younger versions, but I like that so much. And then even hearing this, like, look, you want to build it, and that was what the beginning of the article was talking about. Like, you want to get more and more people, and they're working on that, and they have. It's such an interesting franchise, even though, again, I've only joined in recently. Well, that's kind of the point. This is a franchise that's been around like 20 years. This is a franchise that had an entire, I would say, arc before the popularity explosion. Not even Yakuza 6 really had that. It did have and the games obviously were successful enough to keep making them, but they had such a jump with 7 or Like a Dragon, right? And it's like they had an entire arc with an entire character in Kiryu, such a long freaking arc, and it's almost like those are two entirely different generations, you know what I mean? And I think you can kind of go crazy with that a little bit and say, okay, well now, Yakuza's tripled in size and all this jazz, and now we kind of need to change, the fabric of what it is, because we might have actually more new people than we had original people, right? If it's tripled in size, we have now, say, like 2/3 new and then 1/3 old. Maybe we can just make it all new and keep expanding. So I like the mindset that they want expansion. And they're only almost getting started, right? Like the franchise can continue to grow, and you should look at it like that. At least I would if I was, in that business. But at the same time, you don't want to change, the fiber of what Yakuza is. That's great. That's a great news story, and I'm glad that he said that. As for the Yakuza 3 thing, just really quickly. So again, also coming from Push Square, if you think it's just a remake, you're hugely mistaken. Yakuza Kiwami 3 has major hints about series' future. And the long and short of this is they say, we haven't officially announced anything related to that yet, but once you play it, I think you'll get an idea, or rather a pretty solid sense of what we intend to do with the series going forward. And then, of course, the title line. If you think Yakuza Kiwami 3 is just a remake, you'd be hugely mistaken. And the article goes on to kind of talk about what that could mean. I mean, I think the initial like gut feel would maybe be going towards the story or character, like maybe a villain type arc that will eventually come back. The first thing I thought of, just flat out honest, the first thing I thought was more gameplay mechanics. Now, I don't think they're doing anything like enormously, you know what I mean? I mean, they're going backwards technically. You have like the turn-based in 7 and 8, let's call it, but you already had the back and forth, right? Like man who erased his name, back forth, back forth. So I don't like, that's where I wanted to go was, oh, well, maybe, I don't know, there's a gameplay mechanic or element to it that's a little bit different. But I don't know if that really fits like what's actually happened, right? Like, is that the carryover thing that would impact the future of Yakuza? It could be like literally the fact that Yakuza 3 or Kiwami 3 here has like the expansion type, the Dark Ties DLC or whatever you want to call it, a side story using the villain kind of making its own thing. That might be, okay, maybe there's a seed planted there that eventually kind of comes back in some future Yakuza thing. The thing is, I wonder like how that works, because obviously this is very much, well, okay, number one, it's years and years and years in the past, even if you do kind of a spin-off thing with the villain, it's so far in the past, and like Kiryu, battling cancer and much, much older, where he is now versus then. So you have that. And then also like the general focus on 7 and 8 has been on Ichiban, right? So it's like, okay, well, if it's a villain subplot story type thing, right? How does that directly influence? I guess, Kiryu is always going to be in it, and he is in 8, and he's going to probably be in 9, so, maybe that can kind of come back in, but the story has really, for the most part, focused on Ichiban the last 2. Really, both parts of it don't make, like, 100% sense. You could see where maybe each one of those, like the story element and the gameplay element, you can maybe see how that would work, but not 100% sure. So we'll see. We'll see what he actually means, I guess, at the end of the day. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.